Hello everybody, this is Dumpster Cat. Welcome back to another Pioneer video. In this one we're going to be reviewing the recent Phyrexia spoiler in the form of Glissa Sunslayer, a really interesting card that's going to be directly applicable to BGX midrange in Pioneer. I think this card is really powerful. It's not like overly powerful like some of the other cards we have in the format, like Fable of the Mirror Breaker or cards like Shieldred as well. But it's very promising, and yeah, let's get right into it. So just right off the bat, the two main things that actually stick out for me in this card are just the body and like the general abilities, the First Strike and Death Touch, and actually the mana cost. I think that a lot of people, at least like from what I've seen on other content creators on YouTube, kind of overlook the fact that this is extremely easy to cast in Pioneer. I know like one of the other Glissas from Magic's history has like double black and green. This is just straight up black, green, and one generic, and I think that's going to be really crucial, especially for mid-range of Pioneer, and just in Pioneer in general with our land base is a little restrictive. We don't have fetch lands, obviously, and Glissa's flexibility and just the mana cost alone is really important, I think, and I think that's kind of a discussion that gets oversought in a lot of cases in terms of like applying cards to the Pioneer format. Mana cost is very important in this format, and I'm very glad that Glissa is kind of affordably costed, and just in terms of the overall mana value, and of course the color restrictions or lack thereof. And so moving on, obviously know that the 3/3 body is pretty nice, especially considering she has First Strike and Death Touch, so she's going to be a beast in combat, killing anything that she comes by, and most especially getting through the damage, which comes to the next clause of whenever she deals combat damage to a player, we get to either draw a card and lose one life, destroy an enchantment, or remove up to 3 counters from target permanent. So that last one isn't too applicable in Pioneer, but obviously the first one of drawing a card is very nice. We know that Pioneer is very combat centric and just interaction centric. So Glissa is just a bit weak to removal. Obviously, things like Fatal Push kills her, Stomp she avoids, fortunately, but other cards such as Strangle, pretty much any form of removal in Phoenix, she dies to, unfortunately. But other than that, she's both very good in combat if she's able to block or be blocked, and then if she's able to get through to the damage to the player, obviously it's just cherry on top with her abilities. And so we already know that the first ability with drawing cards is very nice. Card advantage is just the key to the Pioneer format. However, the second ability of destroying an enchantment is a bit more nuanced, I believe. I've put on screen just four choices of artifact or enchantments that are quite powerful in the Pioneer format. Obviously, Fable and Fires being the most prominent, I would believe, with Incarnation and Binding playing in the same deck most often and not being so prevalent. But obviously, Fable and Fires are extremely prevalent in the format right now. Glissa, not too good against Fires of Invention. I will have to say, if you're able to connect with her and destroy Fires the turn after your opponent plays the Fires, then it is a bit more powerful, as obviously your opponent can't cheat on a mana as much. We already know that mid-range, just in general, has an extremely difficult time dealing with big mana decks or any deck that is able to cheat on mana, as Fires of Invention allows people to do. And so this card is kind of a problematic choice for us. Glissa does provide some insurance against that, which is nice. But then again, very often your opponent is just going to already get the value that they want to off of Fires Invention, but it is worth saying that Glissa does provide some sort of insurance and kind of slowing your opponent down in terms of the just raw card advantage that Fires of Invention can often give or just provide to your opponent. And then concerning Glissa's ability to interact with Fable of the Mirror Breaker is very nice. Obviously, we know that this card is extremely prevalent just in the format in general, but definitely in Rakdos, kind of our bigger brother or our arch nemesis in the Pioneer format right now, just at least in mid-range. So on the play, if you're able to get Glissa out and your opponent goes Fable turn 3 as well, Glissa is extremely good. Either, I think most often your opponent's probably going to be blocking with either like a Harvester or the Shaman token. And so that's going to be a pretty decent trade for you. Not the best, as your opponent will still be able to get to the second chapter of the saga and still gain some sort of card selection. So not not too impactful, but just having the inevitability of Glissa being able to interact with the flip side of Fable is kind of what attracts me to the card, as just being able to kind of push through the damage, push through either the card advantage with Glissa's first ability, or of course the interaction, at least concerning to Fable with a Mirror Breaker, or any other random enchantments that your opponent may have, is pretty impactful. And so now the conversation becomes a bit more fun. We get to talk about how we can build around Glissa. So I've put 4 cards on the board here just to kind of explain a few of the ideas I have surrounding the kind of deck building limitations, or just like the synergies that we want to be emphasizing, at least with Glissa and BGX midrange. First off, obviously, like seeing the mana cost 3 mana, my initial reaction was, oh, it probably plays pretty well with Llanowar Royal Elves, or just any form of ramp, at least on turn 1. Getting out a turn 2 Glissa seems very nice, as you're able to push and damage a turn earlier. So that means either more card advantage, more interaction with your opponent's possible enchantments, or random other encounters with the last ability. But yeah, just getting a turn 2 Glissa seems very powerful. I think that you would have to, if you want to go down that route, you would have to build your deck a bit differently, where you're more emphasizing creatures. So not sure if you would want to play like cards like Fatal Push or Thoughtseize, just more creatures, more ramp, I feel like, as well. Perhaps you want to be playing like a Collected Company style of deck, where you obviously emphasize more creatures, and I feel like Glissa would be okay in that shell, but just in terms of mid-range, which is my specialty, I feel like she has a bit more, she's a bit more promising, and just like placing your mana dorks in your mid-range deck is not the best, as they're typically not the best top decks later in the game, or even like in the middle of the game. And so in that sense, I don't think you typically want to be pairing a Glissa alongside mana dorks, just in mid-range shells, that is. However, though, Glissa is an absolute all-star, I believe, alongside Trespasser and Pack Leader already. So it's kind of interesting in the Pioneer format. At least right now, our 2-drops kind of suck in the black and green colors, but our 3-drops are kind of beastly. As you can see, we have Trespasser, and even Liliana is an okay choice nowadays on the board. We have other cards in the format like Phyrexia and Fleshgorger, which are really, really impactful, and that we oftentimes play with. Other cards like Briarbridge Tracker as well that Glissa could play well alongside, just pushing through the damage. But really, what really attracts me towards Glissa in terms of like kind of the other creatures that she could synergize with is Pack Leader. Pack Leader just wants to be attacking, and Glissa also wants to be attacking, or at least just being like prominent in combat. And so I think these 2 cards are going to play very well alongside each other. Both of them gain us card advantage, which is something that we kind of struggle with in the BGX colors, rather. In the past, we have kind of had to form our deck to be a bit more on the aggressive side, where we are leveraging cards like Pack Leader that are able to kind of like tangentially gain us card advantage, not in the typical manner of, say, like Modern with like Dark Confidant, Tireless Tracker cards like that. That I guess you could say more traditionally gain us a more traditional form of card advantage, whereas in the past we've had to leverage cards like Pack Leader that are a bit more aggressive. However, now I think that we could kind of blend those 2 types of archetypes together. I feel like with the Pack Leader and Glissa alongside each other, even with Trespasser, I think that Glissa and Trespasser also play alongside each other quite well. We're able to have lots of card advantage, lots of just like attacking, and yeah, providing us lots of interaction off of that card advantage is just kind of what we want to be doing. Mid-range is just all about mana cost efficiency, and just I guess attacking down your opponent as quickly as possible, or at least as most effectively as possible. And I think that Glissa, especially alongside Trespasser and Pack Leader, is going to be very, very powerful. And then finally, pertaining to the discussion of Glissa and Liliana of the Veil and their synergies together, I think it's a bit more nuanced. I think right off the bat, they play well alongside each other pretty nicely, just in the form of Glissa's card advantage, playing nicely alongside Liliana's card disadvantage, as you're kind of able to pick and choose what cards you want to keep around, especially if you kind of already have a controlling hold on your opponent's mainly board, but also their hand. I think that Glissa and Liliana play well alongside each other. Obviously, with that card advantage and card disadvantage, it's kind of nice. It is a little awkward, I guess you could say, in terms of them both being 3-drops, how you want to sequence and how you want to curve out. I think that oftentimes, if your opponent is obviously playing a creature, you may want to Edict. If you want to be a bit more aggressive, then perhaps Glissa would be the choice. But I think that overall they're quite synergistic, but again, if we do want to be kind of leaning toward that more aggressive shell, where we're leveraging cards like the aforementioned Pack Leader and Trespasser, I guess to a lesser extent Trespasser, Liliana may not be the choice. She's already kind of a questionable choice as is in the format, just at least in terms of how we could kind of leverage her in the black and green colors. And so I'm not sure if she's going to be a mainstay, but it is definitely worth discussing if she plays alongside Glissa, because if she does, then I think we could have a pretty interesting shell of nice interaction, nice card advantage, nice card disadvantage, like I said, alongside Glissa and Liliana. But there's a bit of a contention there, so I'm not really sure how they all interact together just yet. And then finally we have to discuss Glissa's last ability of being able to remove up to 3 counters from target permanent whenever you're able to connect with her. This is kind of interesting. This is like the discussion that I really like to talk about. At least in the Pioneer format we have access to. Just right off the bat, like this is kind of my first idea surrounding her. She may have more applications to other cards that I just haven't thought of. But the 2 cards that came most quickly to my mind were Binding the Old Gods and Hepatra. So just binding, or like any saga in general. So other prominent ones, at least in the black and green colors, are Elspeth's Nightmare, I believe. And then in white, there's like Elspeth Conquers Death and a few other ones that are pretty good. But binding, just like kind of premier removal, at least in the sense of being a bit slow, so typically not played by us, but allows you to ramp further on, and then being able to remove the counters. At least I believe this is how the interaction work. It's a lower counter. So if you're able to like turn 4, like turn 3 Glissa, turn 4 binding, destroy a thing, and then say like turn 5, you if you're able to connect with Glissa, you're able to get that chapter 2 saga on your main phase. And then I think because it says up to 3 counters from, or remove up to 3 counters from target permanent, you're able to just remove 1 from the binding, as it has 2, so it goes back to 1, and you get the destroy target non-land permanent clause. Once again, I think that's how the interaction works. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's going to be really powerful. Obviously playing alongside other sagas like the ones I mentioned is really nice. Unfortunately, we don't have Urza's saga in the format. Otherwise, she'd be pretty insane. But yeah, I think that interaction is pretty neat. And then kind of the corner case scenario where we may want to be playing with Hepatra sometime in the future. I don't think Hepatra is obviously fitting in any form of mid-range deck, but I think I've been brewing around with like a creature collected company -1/-1 counter synergy deck that I think Glissa like would be really, really insane in. I'm not sure. I've been trying to find some sort of combo with her, but I don't think there is yet. But there is definitely like a lot of lines you could do where it's not like infinite combos, but kind of chains of sequences of events that could play out if you're able to connect with Glissa, if you're able to remove a -1 counter from one of your creatures. If you have Hepatra out, it's going to be really, really insane. Obviously, she wants you to put -1 counters onto creatures, especially with her second clause of creating snake tokens. But other than that, if you're able to somehow leverage taking -1/-1 counters off of creatures and getting value off of that, I think it's going to be pretty insane, and I guess pretty interesting nonetheless. Maybe not necessarily insane or good, but I think really interesting, like thought-provoking. Well, I will definitely be working on decks like that kind of are involved with those corner case scenarios. But I think Glissa and Hepatra are pretty interesting, and especially just like with binding as well. I haven't really seen anybody talking about these cards and how they synergize together. So let me know if you think they're going to be powerful interactions or not. But yeah, I think they're interesting to think of nonetheless. With that being said, though, all wrapped up, I really like Glissa. I'm not entirely sold on her just yet. I think she definitely is going to be tested by a lot of BGX players, including me. So be on the lookout for content surrounding her in the future whenever Phyrexia releases, I think early February or mid-February. So be on the lookout for that. As I said, I am a bit concerned about some of her interactions. She has a nice 3 toughness body, so I think that's going to be very crucial. If she was like a 3/2 or even like a 4/2, it would be a bit more controversial in my opinion. But 3/3 definitely nice. First strike, death touch, very nice, especially concerning how combat centric and combat focused the Pioneer format is. And I think that she's pretty promising. Let me know your thoughts down below, what you think of her. She, just like off the top of my head, she is really great against any sort of mid-range deck. Obviously she's not that good against mono green or any combo deck. I'm not really sure. I don't think there's any combo decks that rely off of enchantments. I think like Lotus Field definitely does not. Yeah, I can't really think of any other off the top of my head, but not really good against the combo. She does provide some sort of card advantage, so she's like not the worst against them, but Glissa definitely shines in mid-range and creature-focused matchups, I would believe. She's just like a beast in combat, like I said, and does provide some sort of card advantage, which is nice. Besides that, though, I think that's enough for me. Let me know your thoughts down below about Glissa. Consider subscribing if you want to. I think that she's going to be really insane, but obviously I'm open to listening to alternative opinions. Always want to engage in conversations, especially when it pertains to these new cards and how we can kind of further our exploration of the BGX archetype in Pioneer, as it's my beloved archetype. I'm sure it is. It's yours as well. So let's get the conversation going with this card and just the mid-range archetype in general. So with that being said, see you in the next one, and thank you so much for watching.